How would you react if I said Madhuri Dixit was underrated as a Bollywood star? And yet, it's true. See, we all talk about Amitabh Bachchan's angry young man who took a stand against the structural inequalities of life in 1970s India, which continued into 1980s India, but no one really talks about the rage-filled performances of Madhuri Dixit, whose characters were often consumed by rage at the emotional and social inequality of women in India. She played characters who were burdened by society, who was wronged by the men in their life, be it their father, brother, husband, or lover, who lived under the endless tyranny of social roles and expectations that they were either unable to shake off or else had to fight with all their might. Hi, my name is Amrita. I co-host Khandan, a Bollywood podcast with my good friends Asim and Sujoy. And today we are going to take a look at Bollywood's original angry young woman, Madhuri Dixit. The classic Bollywood heroine is made of moonbeams and rainbows and everything sweet. Up until the 70s, there was a very clear divide between heroine and vamp. You might have heard of the Madonna whore complex, which was first coined by Sigmund Freud. The Madonna, represented by the Virgin Mary, is venerated, she's respectable, marriage material, the future mother of your children. The whore is, of course, sexually available, open to the male gaze. In Hindi cinema, we see this in a million movies. Think of anything that had Helen playing the vamp, for example. There she was in her skin-tight outfits, the big feathers in her hair, the décolletage on full display. Everything about her was designed to grab your attention and give you deeply funny feelings. At the same time, you had the heroines like, say, Nanda or Sadhana or Asha Parekh, who were beautiful women covered from head to toe and less visibly available for their male peers. While vamps got punished, abused, and set aside, the chaste woman was revered and ultimately vindicated by the greatest prize, marriage to a man. This began to change with the arrival of Sharmila Tagore with her princely cricketer boyfriend and her tiny little bikini, and by the 1970s, Parveen Babi and Zeenat Aman established that women could be both sexy and wife material. In most of their movies, they were actually seen as wife material because they were sexy. Just think back to the movies they each did with Amitabh Bachchan, for example. And then came Sridevi. For the first time, Hindi cinema had a versatile lead actress who could not only play the child woman, the sexy woman, but also a deeply unpleasant woman. We'd have the odd anti-heroine, so to speak, in movies like Intakam, where Sadhana married a man just to torture him as revenge for his father's crimes, but Sridevi was out here playing characters who were just, how do I put it, word that rhymes with ditches. Now, that's a deeper essay for another day, but the arrival of Sridevi set the stage for Hindi cinema's angriest heroine,
Madhuri Dixit.
Madhuri Dixit.
Hi, this is Madhuri Dixit.
Who knew that a woman who debuted as a literal Rajshri Productions heroine would be the one to take that title? But after a string of rather lackluster roles following the release of Abodh in 1984, it was in Tezab in 1989 that we began to see the performer we now know her to be. An adaptation of Walter Hill's Streets on Fire in 1984, Tezab was peak 1980s pulp about an angry young man trying to recover from violent tragedy and an angry young woman in search of love. It had a hero whose life was lost to anger and revenge, and a heroine who was caged by circumstances, including the worst father in all of Hindi cinemadom. Tezab is mostly remembered for its music today, which is absolutely legit given how Ek Do Teen was an event in the history of Bollywood music. But we also had a heroine who was beautiful and damaged and betrayed in the most horrible of ways, and whose reaction to that wasn't, "Oh no, poor me," but anger. Just flaming, all-consuming anger. This was a pattern we would keep seeing in Madhuri's performances in big movies where she technically held what we call flower pot roles. A flower pot role is when the female lead has nothing to do in a movie except look pretty and romance the hero. But be it Ram Lakhan, Tridev, or Zindagi Ek Jua, when Madhuri came on screen, she brought fire and brimstone. Her performance in the song O Ramji Bada Dukh Deena, for example, was very much in the tradition of a Bollywood heroine reproaching her lover for his shortcomings. But Madhuri brought a level of contempt to her performance that was, frankly, revolutionary. She wasn't just reproaching Lakhan, she was looking down on him for his terrible choices. That's just not something a good Bollywood heroine is expected to do. Similarly, in Zindagi Ek Jua, she plays a woman who is sexually liberated to the extent that when she meets the man she wants, she's the one who chases him down and seduces him and shows zero remorse for any of it. And when she realizes that he's nothing better than a common drug peddler, much like her father, she redirects her anger towards herself because she has no one to blame but herself for being in love with a criminal. When she dies of an overdose, she is committing an act of agency and rage that we seldom get to witness in any cinema, much less Bollywood. Even in a movie like Dil, which is your standard enemies to lovers turned star-crossed lovers, Madhuri easily outclasses everyone in the cast with a performance that moves through various shades of anger. She is by turns angry at being harassed at college, then angry at parental interference, and then angry at a fate in the guise of a terrible father-in-law that tears her from her husband. And in Parinda, where she plays a sweet girlfriend, she brings a degree of rage when confronting her childhood sweetheart for what she believes was his complicity in the death of her brother. But as we move deeper into the 90s, her performances got more and more fiery. In Beta, she has a scene where she confronts a horde of men attacking Anil Kapoor and she fends them off with a machete. In Anjam, the entire second half is fueled by her desire for revenge and justice against Shah Rukh Khan and his cronies for destroying her life and her family. While Anjam has been panned by audiences and critics alike for its violence, it remains an excellent depiction of the cold rage Madhuri could bring to any role. In Koyala, she doesn't back down an inch in front of an acting powerhouse like Amrish Puri and brings all the rage she can muster to her slow realization that she had undergone a sham marriage and the man she loved was merely a flunky to the supervillain in her life. Once again, it is through dance that she portrays heartbreak, love, betrayal, and rage. Her expressive face tells the story in Saason Ki Mala Pe Simru Mein Pee Ka Naam. As she moved into her quote-unquote woman-oriented films phase in the late 90s, her performance in Mrityudand seemed tailor-made for who Madhuri was at the time. We've seen a lot of male heroes whose real characters blur the lines between their personal journey and the journey of the characters they play on screen, but Madhuri is one of the rare women actors in India who was afforded that kind of framing in Mrityudand. The movie starts with her as the charming, conservative wife, but slowly moves into the story of her disillusionment with her husband and society at large. Much like Madhuri finding her footing in Hindi cinema, The character of Ketki Singh gets angrier and angrier as the story progresses, by turns flaming hot and stern as she confronts the evil in her home and outside. A few years later, Madhuri played a brief role in Rajkumar Santoshi's Lajja, where she is a theatre actress who has a meltdown while playing Sita. This is the kind of movie and character that would be impossible in today's India. While on the run from her abusive husband, Manisha Koirala comes across Madhuri, who is playing Sita. She is a free-spirited individual who is now pregnant with a baby that her lover no longer wants. In the middle of a performance of the Ramayana, she begins to question why Sita must suffer injustice, and the man she loves does not defend her. Madhuri in this scene delivers a phenomenal performance, and you can feel her grief as well as her rage. In the midst of these movies, she was still playing lead roles in mainstream movies. In Pukar, for instance, she played a woman scorned by the man she has loved her whole life. This act of rejection then truly becomes her villain origin story as she sets out to sabotage this man's new relationship. Hindi cinema has seen many a rejected male lover who turns obsessive stalker. Shah Rukh Khan's career is built on that trope, but Madhuri is one of the very few heroines who were able to not only play that gender-flipped obsessive lover, but also make her deeply empathetic. Her eventual realization of the evil of her actions and her subsequent heartbreak will stay with you long after the movie as a whole vanishes from your memory. And then, of course, there is Devdas, where she spends most of the movie simmering on the inside at every slight offered her. She is the picture of wounded dignity as she spars with both Devdas, who has a hatred of prostitutes but apparently not of prostitution, and Paro, who is a self-righteous and entitled woman. Her big scene in the movie is when she is humiliated at the big party at the end of Dola Re Dola, and she asks the assembled guests why she's not allowed to live her life with dignity and as a member of society when her job, and indeed she herself as a person, wouldn't exist if not for the very men who look down on her and her sisters. These days, her career and her characters look a lot different than they did in the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s, but they're still portrayals of women nursing a grievance. In Netflix's The Fame Game, she plays the kidnapped star with desperation tinged with anger, sometimes hidden behind a smile and sometimes naked and painful. In Gulab Gang, she faces off against fellow 90s alum Juhi Chawla, who plays a villain with delicious elan. And this is perhaps Madhuri's fieriest performance in years. She's not just simmering under the surface here, she is angry, physically angry, and willing to take up arms for it. It's almost a throwback to the kind of angry female characters we had for a brief period in the 80s, like Sridevi's Sherni, except this is allegedly based on a real-life group of women vigilantes who fought for their rights in rural India. In our conversations about Madhuri's fantastic talent for dance, her beauty, her iconic stature in Bollywood history, we seem to miss the singular role she played in portraying Indian womanhood as we navigated those turbulent years of the 1990s and early 2000s. During those decades, Indian women went through a drastic transformation in terms of agency, ambition, sexuality, and just plain visibility. The Indian women of today stand on the shoulders of giants, and one of them is Madhuri Dixit, the woman who not only brought female rage to the big screen, but made it the iconic core of her star personality. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. All the good stuff. This essay was made possible by our subscribers over at the Khandan Podcast Patreon, which you can join from $1 onwards. Your support allows us to create new content, and you get a range of rewards from early access to merch. Follow us on Khandan Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you for listening. My name is Amrita, and this is Khandan, a Bollywood podcast.